And I thought,
Hello, 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 hello. Today I think I'm not going to watch any of the video sections. I think I'll just go through the notes and like keep making my own notes. And if I'm stuck somewhere, I don't understand something, I'll look up the videos for today, I think. And I'll just have like a podcast running on in the background.
that's interesting. And I find myself referring back to the accounts and realize I hadn't actually noticed that. It's actually right. It's like, and I don't know, there were loads of little moments like that. And that was my journey of discovery as well. Of, even little things like we always think the first people that saw Jesus were the wise men.
Right.
Because of course the wise men would come before the rough shepherds in dirty clothes and bad language and stinking of horse manure. Of course the king was to come. But as you know, the first people to see the baby Christ were the outcasts, the people who weren't even at Passover time allowed into the town because they were considered unclean. So they were kept outside the city limits always. But the star leads these rough, shepherds in to see the baby. And it's only really, they think, like 2 or 3 years later that these mystics, again, not, they're called wise kings, but actually they were realistically, I think, sort of Eastern mystics,
right,
who had been following this, the alignment of the stars with this conviction that the Savior is to be born in the city of David. Yeah. And they come and they provide what eventually is financial support for the years that they were about to live as refugees when they were.
That was really interesting because you talk about sort of them being gifted this gold, this sort of golden ornament, and this frankincense, and these gifts aren't really reflected on, but yeah, it made sense to think, well, if this precedes a flight to Egypt, this could be what they use to get through.
Well, I think part of it, I mean, again, it's conjecture, isn't it? Who knows, but it makes sense. So like maybe the gold was just gave enough to last those years of living as nomads and refugees in the Egyptian desert, But then again, that would have been only the gold, I read a thing on this the other day. I can't remember what the frankincense was for, but certainly the myrrh, I think, was a burial one, So that was, is that right? I think it's right. Frankincense was something else.
Yeah.
But again, there's so many elements like this that we skip over, that it's like, for me, it's like too brilliant,
right,
to just have this story to fallen in these places, and that's a part for me is reassuring. And back to your times when you're saying of doubt, one of the ways I deal with my times of doubt is to look back of like actually into, and that's why this book has helped me so much in my own journey of faith. But I almost feel it's that phrase, the theology of embarrassment. Have you heard of this?
I don't think so.
It's that if you were crafting a true story, there's some embarrassing elements to the story.
Right, yeah.
Or I think maybe they call it criteria of embarrassment.
Yeah, absolutely.
That just you wouldn't do.
That you wouldn't make up.
The child of wedlock, these sort of, you wouldn't write of yourself like betraying Jesus 3 times or appearing first to women and, in the resurrection, and it's a whole list of these sort of things. And it's those elements that always kind of, I find reassuring. But again, I come from a very simple brain, I really do.
But I think it's brilliantly put together, and I some things jumped out at me. I've been trying to study the New Testament for years now, and so it was really interesting. I can imagine why you're getting emails from people saying this is really weird. Like people might read, for example, that you say that there are 5 wise men, 5 magi. Most people think that there were 3.
Well, where's that come from?
But the Gospels don't say that.
Exactly. It's little things like that, but
which also I think allow people. I really think that when you go and watch that nativity scene at the school or whatever, and you see
the
there
green lobster in the manger.
Yeah. And, like there are the 3 wise men, but if you see 5 of them come in, it just sort of stops you for a second. And even though you know that those are the magi, you think, oh gosh, there are 5 of them. Why are there 5? Wait, who are they? And it makes you sort of see it with fresh eyes, as it were. So I was wondering,
it's fresh eyes that is how I encounter this, and it's fresh eyes for people that I want. And that's why I think people are responding to this, because if you arrive with the preconception of like, this is a book about this, and this is what I know, it's like, I want people to start from ground zero. This is where I started. And it's like, I think the other factor is we've had 2,000 years of the story being ruined. And I really feel that. I feel there's 2,000 years of an awful lot of religion has ruined it. Dressed it up in sort of a lot of sort of, corrupt churches and corrupt sects and corrupt sort of, religions. And I don't know, it's just like, we've done a really good job as humankind of spoiling a really beautiful story if it's true. And I kind of feel like in my own life as well, it's my own journey of faith was that as well. I found I had a really beautiful natural faith as a kid, whereas like, I know that it's just, there's a connection, it was no more than that.
Yeah, right.
And then I went to school and suddenly like everyone was speaking in Latin and wore white robes. It was all very full, I had a mini version of what humans are experiencing 2,000 years of thinking this is what God is, telling me not to do this, speak in Latin, behave yourself and shut up.
Yeah.
So for me, it's been a lifetime of unraveling that to find actually that's the bathwater, dirty, grubby, was probably going to make you sick. But the baby in this thing, if you can take him out of the bathwater, is amazing. And I want people to experience that baby, the real story of how it really was to have walked that land with this man. I wanted people to find that afresh.
And there's something, finding it afresh implies that, I can pick up this book and I've never heard this story before and I'm discovering this. But also if you are familiar with the New Testament, you'll pick this up and hopefully it'll be new. Like if somebody came to you and said, I've heard about this Jesus guy, but I've never really understood the story before. Would you say to them, like, this book that I've written will take you through that story? Or would you say to them, tell you what, go and read the 4 Gospels, then come back and read this as a kind of commentary or retelling? Like, would this be a starting point for people?
Because I think it is a starting point. But the irony is, it's also like, at whatever level you're at, it works. Yeah. And I think ultimately you're never going to improve on the Bible. The Bible is always going to be number one, because you can't improve on, but I think it's stepping stones. It's cold. It's hard for people to go to cold to boiling in one step sometimes. Sure. And I've had this experience with one of my best friends who's a brilliant brain, like you, an Oxford guy, strong sort of atheist guy. And I remember saying to him years ago, I said, do you know that you should just read the 4 Gospels? And he goes, no, you're right. I've just got to do that because I actually haven't studied. I'm going to do it. And then kind of didn't, or then dipped in and then got a bit bored. Because as you say, it's sparse.
Yeah.
To me, when you have faith, it's like the scales come off a little bit and you see the sparsity as the beauty.
Yes.
And the honey is there. But it's hard to just say, read it. So I kind of wanted to take people on a bit of a journey with that, and that journey takes many forms, and that will play a part.
Those decisions that you made, like some of them are seemingly a little bit arbitrary, like the 5 magi, not 4, not 6. Like, did you just sort of pluck that out of thin air? Did you just have to go with something?
I want to trip people up on what they think of as real, when actually it's just convention.
Right. Okay.
I wanted people to go, hold on. And most people would just skip over that. But I quite like it when I get theologians going, I kind of was interested in that. Mary, I always thought she rode on a donkey to Bethlehem. Yeah. But actually, there's nothing about that. The donkey was Jesus rode on a donkey into Jerusalem for that final week as a symbol of servitude. I kind of like tripping people up on things people think is real to help them find out actually what is maybe real. And along the way, there's, because again, I think that's been my journey of like, you get so used to hearing people talk at you from a church, and that goes in here, but it doesn't go in here. So sometimes it's like you need to disconnect to reconnect.
Yeah. And that chronology that you were talking about before, when you sat down to put this together, you have to make some probably relatively tough choices because they're quite thematically relevant. Like if Jesus flips the tables near the end of his life, that's maybe part of the reason why he's arrested and crucified. Because at the beginning of his life, then it's not. Did you just sort of sit down in the jungle and work it out for yourself? Did you consult
that
theologians?
bit we
how
did
did you put
really
that together?
carefully with theologians, and he does flip the table at the end.
At the end as well.
But he also does at the beginning.
Yeah, because that's doing it twice is the solution, right?
Which was the solution, and sometimes that sort of thing works because that's accurate. You know, one gospel says it's done the beginning and on a separate occasion, and then there was another that epic sort of final week is important to get, you know, that chronology absolutely right. But exactly when he crossed from Galilee to feed the 5,000 and to free the demon-possessed man in here, and that journey, we kind of, you just got to kind of eventually commit to one way, haven't you? And that's why there were these epic Zoom calls with a lot of theologians where we'd eventually go, let's do it like that. But it's interesting. Some of the discussions were like things like, but hold on, Jesus didn't have brothers and sisters. The Catholics will really fervently believe he didn't have brothers and sisters. And it's like, and I'd written it in this early bit with brothers and sisters, but of course, then the Aramaic translation of brothers and sisters actually implies a wider family of cousins. And it was like, let's not even trip people up on it. I don't want to like put that line in that about Jesus' brothers and sisters, and then lose Catholics who go, well, because I don't agree with that, I'm going to discard the rest of the book.
Yeah.
Those are called stumbling blocks for people. So just remove it. Take that bit out. Don't be a stumbling block. Let's get people to the real meat rather than getting sort of hung up because we're arguing about the herbs in this meal,
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about the sort of brothers.
So just take it. We just took that line out, and we did that a lot on things.
I was going to ask, are there other bits that you just sort of removed that
yes,
you would have otherwise
lots of things
about?
that in the first draft. It's like, actually, that's going to be tricky for people of different faiths and stuff, but it doesn't add anything to the story,
right?
So let's just keep it flowing.
Can you think of an example? Not to make you have a position on it, but the kind of debate that you thought wasn't worth having in the book.
I think that was a key one.
Right, the brothers.
Yeah.
Because of course it's the question of the perpetual virginity of Mary, right? If Jesus has brothers, then Mary's had other children, and if he doesn't, then maybe she didn't.
Exactly.
And I can see why that's, at least in a project like this, worth just sort of left untouched, perhaps.
Yeah, because don't be a stumbling block. All I want for this is to be a bridge for people, a gate for people. It's what it's proving. That's why I get these people of so many cultures and faiths writing about this. It's like it's an accessible way of finding out this love story. And I don't want to be a stumbling block. It's why we've changed the names. It's why we've gone back to the old names and the old places. So you arrive at it fresh.
Yeah. You spoke on another podcast about this analogy that you draw. Only you mentioned how people have sort of messed up the story and gotten it wrong over the past few thousand years. And I think it's pretty easy to point to examples of where people have gone astray. And you've compared this in the past to Elvis Presley?
Well, first of all, we're all part of that story of messing it up. So I'm not sat here going, religion's messed it up, you've messed it up, you've messed it up. I've messed it up, is the truth. I've messed it up because none of us tell the story of Christ very well. So when my Elvis thing was like, most people love Elvis, but we think the Elvis impersonator is a little bit weird, which is sort of probably a fair description. And I feel that a little bit about faith. If you actually get to the meat of, of the story of Christ, what his nature, which was radical and free and laughter and, like the Pharisees, the main accusation for those 3 years of his ministry against him is that he was a glutton and a drunkard. At which point Jesus would have roared with laughter and said, on one hand, you're saying to my cousin John, you're like this. And there's me, you're saying, it's not how we imagine Jesus.
Right, exactly. You sort of
so I feel like the church has, and we are part of messing that up because we've formalized and we've put it in religion. We've made it all very kind of like we it's our human nature. We like to put things in a box, but love doesn't live in a box. So we're always going to kind of mess it up. I am part of that, even to the extent. I mean, I'll give you an example. Like the other day, my eldest son, his girlfriend, who's wonderful, she goes, "Just tell me about your faith. Tell me about the faith stuff." She was reading she saw the book. And I kind of stumbled through some really, and after about 3 minutes, I thought, I could see Jesse look at me going, "What are you?" It's like, you're making absolutely no sense. And it's like, I've explained this so badly. And it's like trying to describe a really sort of, I don't know, trying to like describe swimming to somebody who's never seen water. Where you jump in this thing and it's all around, it keeps you up, can feel pretty scary, feels like wet and like crazy, but then like, you know?
Yeah.
And she was so sweet, looked at me like, you're really making no sense. And I thought, thank God love shines and spreads without, thank goodness it's not all dependent on us, because I don't do a very good job of that. So I include myself in the messing up of the story over 2,000 years. We've all been part of that.
It's amazing to hear you say that because of the way the book turns out. So I guess, you can think about it a bit more and consult people if you're having issues. But that makes me think, I understand if someone just comes to you and says, tell me about this faith thing, tell me about this Christianity thing. It's like, whoa, where do I even begin? You must have had that feeling right in the book. Like, did you write this in order? Did you just sort of sit down?
It was a terrifying thing. It was a terrifying thing, but I kind of like really just felt compelled to try and start. And I knew where I was going to start, which was picking up the phone to Andrew, who's just become over the years a brilliant, brilliant friend, and is probably the best theological mind that I know, and is really sort of calm and measured and just brilliant. And just said, how would we do this? Where would you take that chronology, for example? What I knew I wanted to do was to get the spirit, to get like, to strip away, to show why was he called a glutton and a drunkard? Why did everyday people just want to be with him? Why would people fight to get through the crowd just to touch his cloak? Why did the religious elite fear him so much? What was it about this guy that is so the opposite of what I was brought up thinking Jesus was about? Why? That's what I wanted to get to. And then it was just assembling a team to help kind of get it accurate, because ultimately I really cared about that. So much so that even when things were right, we pulled the whole first print run of like, there were just few things I'd seen after. I thought, hold on, that's not quite right.
Oh, really?
And it's like, I just felt this has got to be right.
Yeah.
And it's why now I do stand actually with, tentative confidence behind it. Not total confidence, because it's sort of human and it's going to have some few flaws, but actually with a good degree of confidence. That's why actually now when I see these emails come through from the professors, my confidence is growing with it.
Yeah.
Is at 99.9% of the time, it's like, I was expecting it to have holes, but actually good job. And that's down to a good team on it.
So this was on its print run and it was like ready to go, and you sort of
there were like 50,000 copies ready to go.
And you pulled it.
I paid to pull it, yeah.
And was it something in particular, or was it just like a vibe thing?
It was like 3 or 4 things, and it was just like, it's just like I knew we'd it's just got to be right. I can't explain. It's like a feeling, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I ended up pulling it, and ended up at the end of it, the editor said, we worked then for a month, redid it. He said, we're good to go. He said, do you know how many changes you've done since you told me it was good as we're ever going to get 3 months ago? He said, you've done 1,200 changes to it. So it's like, I almost know every page, every kind of paragraph on this book now.
I bet.
But not out of anything, but apart from like, it's brought me closer and closer to the nature of Jesus that I first kind of fell in love with, and is like been such a beautiful part of my life. And I need it. I really find it, like, for me, it's like bread and butter and honey every day, that this story.
You don't start with Mary. I mean, you do, but there's this very brief prologue where you sort of flash forward to the road to Emmaus, and you've got these 2 disciples walking along the road. Jesus,
the first thing I wrote for this book was that page.
I was wondering if you wrote that, because a lot of authors will finish a book and then they'll go back and they'll figure out how to open it. But why was
it was the first thing I wrote? Because I don't know. I just really.
Why was that the place to start?
Because it was a revelation of me of like, I wonder what point the penny dropped with them all. Those people who spent all this time with Jesus. When do you think the penny dropped? Because you think like this divinity was shown all the time, and yet I kind of find it reassuring that as disciples, they're regular people, and like you probably wake up the next day and you're kind of already questioning yourself.
Yeah,
goes, hold on, but that guy who was frothing and foaming at the mouth, and then was like, or that arm that was here, is like, hold on, maybe,
Yeah.
And I don't know. I just love that scene of like, even at the end when he told them. So I mean, he tells them once gently. He tells them twice, about what's going to happen to you. I will be, and eventually he's sitting there again. I will be tortured. I will be crucified, and I will rise again on the third day.
Mm-hmm.
It's like no metaphors. It's like he's spoken stories and metaphors all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, this is clear now. Listen to me.
Yeah.
Boom, boom, boom. And even then, like, they're not anticipating it. They just really think it's the end. And I just love that bit of like Jesus being playful. I mean, I remember before writing this book, reading a 300-page book on just the playful nature of Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Again, something kind of like I'd never thought about, but so playful all the time. And I like that idea of him toying with them as he reveals on that road, saying, "Tell me what's been happening." And they go, "You idiot! What do you mean? Tell you what? You must be the only person in the world that doesn't know what's happened the last few days."
And that part's actually in the gospel, isn't it? Where they say, you must be the only guy who's not
totally
heard.
And I like that. And he's like, let me, and he starts, and then they go, it's that wonderful line of, did not our hearts burn within us? Because that's the start. For me, that was always a place to start the story. Like, now I want you to go, why?
Yeah.
Why does this make your heart burn within you? And it's the ultimate question of life, really.
Yeah. I think it's an important decision that you make to not change the words of Jesus. But inevitably, you have to do some things with Jesus. So, for example, when you're talking about his upbringing with John the Baptist, his cousin, and at one point, for example, you describe, John as being a bit sort of boisterous and telling jokes, and Jesus as being the more sort of quiet one. So you do have to make some decisions. I suppose you didn't have to, but you chose to make some decisions as sort of giving Jesus like personality traits, especially in his younger life that again, was that like theologically informed? Was that a council of theologians on Zoom, or was that you just thinking, this is what I imagine?
I think that's okay. I felt, it's a line. It's just beginning to introduce this nature of Jesus, because actually you don't get to meet the guy until you're a third of the way through, really.
Right.
The meat of it happens there.
Yeah.
So we're just pointing towards his nature and his character in a way. But when it comes to actually the first words and the last words, they've got to be absolutely right. I didn't want to change a single one of those.
Yeah. And then did you otherwise write the book in order? In, did you just sit down and start with Mary and then just...
Yeah.
And did you decide before you started writing it, these are the viewpoints? Or did you sort of write up to the wedding at Cana and then go, let's go for, how about Thomas now? And then you go, let's go for
No, I did that with Andrew and with Craig and with another of the theologians. We kind of thought we should be really contrasting, interesting perspectives to get it from. That covers all of humanity, basically. So that's why you want the innocent to the skeptic, to the arrogant, to the impulsive, to the broken, to the clinical. Because that's all of us. Everyone's going to be one of those.
Were there perspectives that didn't, were there like names where you were like, maybe we could do it from this person's perspective that didn't make it? Or was it sort of those five?
I feel we covered it really well. It feels beautiful ending with Mary Magdalene as a sort of broken teenager find it, and then encountering Jesus, and just like, she's so all in and so human with it as well, and very tender sort of way to end. I feel sort of wraps up the quite sort of male middle bit of it, and it's I don't know, Jesus always affirming women. That was it felt right, top and tailing the book with it at that.
I had a podcast with a scholar called Helen Bond, who wrote a book called Women Remembered, which is this sort of rediscovery of the women, because I mean, two of the characters that you speak from the perspective of are women. And there's this extraordinary thing in the Gospels where you can read all the way through the narrative, and then right at the end, when Jesus is being crucified, it says, oh, and by the way, there were these women at the cross. Oh, and by the way, they had been following Jesus and funding his ministry, like from their own pocket, like this whole time when you didn't get a mention until now. And so I agree that it's a worthwhile pursuit.
And also, like, You've got Mary Magdalene and then Mary, the mother of Jesus, at the foot of the cross.
Yes.
Where's everyone else?
Yeah.
The answer is
they fled
in terror, which is kind of reflective of all of us, really.
Yeah.
And I don't know. There's so many bits. First of all, I'm really touched that you know it so well, and you've read it so much. I think you just got a great seeking heart. It's amazing. But there's certain parts of the book that really afterwards really have stayed with me.
Yes.
And I thought it was interesting, it might be interesting for you. But one was the first time Jesus starts to do anything supernatural, which I don't know if you've ever thought about this. But it's like, where are these 17 years, between, temple, getting lost,
Yes.
age 12, and starting this ministry? And I don't know, I just get a feeling, and again, I don't know if this would be right, but it kind of feels like natural and right. It's almost like he knew as soon as he started to do something supernatural, the clock ticks.
Yeah. Because that's what happens. Mary comes to him.
And Mary is the one, and they're at this wedding, they're having fun, and they're like, Jesus is letting his hair down, he's having fun with his friends, and it's his mother. Like, I know I really related to this, as like, I don't know, maybe with your mother, or like, some mother's tugging his seat, go, I need to talk to you. It's like, I'm having fun.
Not now.
It's like, but there's a problem. It's like, it's not my, and he says, it's not my problem.
Yeah.
Which is like really interesting.
Yeah, that is.
Because everything for the
strange.
rest of his life is his problem.
Yeah.
He's in everybody's element of all their life.
Yeah.
In a beautiful way, healing, touching, affirming, correcting, guiding, helping, loving. But then he goes, this isn't my, it's like, he knows, it almost feels like he knows that once I begin, the clock ticking. But yet on the other side, it's only a mother that knows, like, when, time to fly, spread the wings, time to fly. And eventually she keeps tugging. And then what I like is that Jesus doesn't even respond then to her. You know what she does? She just tells the servant, she knows she's got him.
Yeah.
She just says, do
what
whatever he says.
Yeah.
And it's like, boom. The journey begins.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like, this is how I try and live my life. Like I that's become a real thing for me in my faith. When I have my struggles and when I have my doubts, I go back to that of like, just do whatever he says. And it helps me.
Yeah. I'd not thought about that. The prospect of somebody coming. And of course, it's Jesus's mum. And this is at the beginning. And it seems like a relatively trivial thing. We've run out of wine.
Yeah.
But the idea of someone coming to Jesus for help and him going like, it's none of my business.
Yeah.
And yet you're right. As soon as he makes that decision, say, okay, fine. Then he's not saying that to anybody anymore. Now, like you say, the clock is ticking. I hadn't thought of that as like the sort of watershed moment.
Because now people are saying, hold on.
Yeah. Right.
And also, it was such an outrageous thing as well. It wasn't like, was it 60 gallons or 600 gallons? It was a lot. It was like 200 pictures of this stuff. It wasn't like just like a couple of glasses.
Yeah.
And it's like, if we're going to start, this is a message, which is the message of the New Testament. It's a message of the great story. It's a message of extravagant love.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to start, we're not going to just give you a thimble full of wine.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah.
And then I like Thomas going, hold on. How did he do this?
Yeah, because that's the moment you switch over to Thomas, right?
Mm.
And then Thomas is sort of blown away. But then again, it's like sort of a few chapters later, you've got Thomas being like, okay, that was pretty weird, but
yeah,
it's not quite enough. Like, surely I've got to see a little bit more. And then
which he does. But then at the end of his, it's not the miracle. He goes, it wasn't the miracles that changed my heart. It was his love for people, for love for us. It's like the miracles he knows. The head part says this is undeniable. I've seen the guy walk on water. I can't. But it's like it was his love that really changed me.
Well, the most famous story of Thomas in the Gospels is him sort of demanding to see the wounds of Christ. And Jesus says something really interesting to him, which is he sort of appears to him and says, here I am, Thomas, touch my wounds. And he says, you believe because you've seen, blessed are those who believe without seeing. But I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but if you look at Christian art, it's always Thomas touching the wounds of Jesus. But the gospel never actually says that Thomas touches the wounds.
Yeah.
It just says that Thomas demands to see the wounds. And when Jesus shows up and says, here I am, Thomas drops to his knees, and says, my Lord and my God. And there's one reading of the story as if to say, Thomas had thought that what he wanted was like empirical evidence and to see the miracle. But when actually confronted with the person of Jesus, he realizes that that's not what it's about. I quite like that reading of John's Gospel.
Yeah. And also like, no, you're good.
Yeah. Yeah.
But also, I remember that when I first understood that, it used to challenge my faith a bit. That because I used to think, well, hold on, maybe Jesus could be a ghost. He actually didn't feel the blood and the wounds.
Yeah, right.
It's like maybe he's a ghost. But then the next line, he sits and breaks bread and eats
he's like
fish with
eating.
them. Which kind of. And then I found out reassuring.
Yeah.
My life is a whole. Listen, my faith stumbled. You've just seen. You basically summed up my. That's how my faith goes. And moments of doubt, and then quite reassuring, and then back to my knees to listen to Mary to say, do whatever he says. You've just witnessed it.
Yeah. That's a great. I've not thought of the moral of the story of the wedding at Cana in that way. The sort of just do what he says.
Tell me about you. Tell me where because you have such a brilliant understanding of all this, much greater than mine. Where does it leave? How do you feel about all of this?
Well, thank you. I'm interested in the New Testament from a sort of scholarly perspective. And
when did that begin?
A few years ago, I think I was talking about religion and theology, and I had a biblical scholar on my show. And as so often happens, I might have an expert in animal consciousness. And so I'll say, okay, this week I've got to sit down. I've got to learn about how octopus brains works. And as happened with the octopus brains, the same thing happens here, which is actually, this is way more interesting than I thought. And I want to keep looking into this. And so for me, the thing, like, I talk about this and I debate this all the time, and I debate whether Jesus was God or whether he even claimed to be God and all of this kind of stuff. But for me, the undeniable thing is that there's this extraordinary historical figure who did something extraordinary. And there's something really weird that happened that caused a bunch of people to start quite early on worshipping him, which is a very strange thing to do to a human being, especially in a Jewish culture. And so to me, getting at the Gospels from a scholarly perspective helps me to understand who this historical figure was. That's the thing I'm really interested in, almost in the way that somebody might be really interested in Julius Caesar or in whether the Iliad, whether the Trojan War really happened and whether that kind of stuff. I sort of take this approach.
That feels to me like that was your point of entry.
Yes. Yeah.
But you've had such a journey and you've met so many amazing people and you've debated so many different angles and things. Where's it led you to?
It's led me to, well, I used to be quite on board with the new atheism stuff. I've spoken about this a lot on my show.
What does that mean?
You know, like the sort of Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, it was really popular, the debates that they were doing, they called it new atheism.
Yeah.
And it was this body of like atheist thought with the God delusion, this kind of stuff, which was really popular. And it had this sort of quite strident, debate me bro kind of attitude. And I was really swept up by that. I thought that was really exciting and cool. And I was beginning to sort of shake that off and grow up a bit, essentially. And then running the podcast, what I've realized is that this is far more interesting and intricate. And I would say plausible than I'd given it credit for before. So, I'm still not a Christian. Some people say to me, like,
it's a funny word though, that anyway.
Yeah.
Like I'm less and less certain about the word.
Yeah.
You know what somebody said to me the other day? You're like this. The period of greatest growth ever in the history of the church was from 33 AD to 350.
Yeah.
And during this time, there was no church buildings, no sermons, but no singing, and no Bible.
Yeah.
And like we get very tied up in all of those things and the labels and even the phrase Christian.
Yeah.
It's like I'm not sure where, for me, it feels quite like man-made, these sort of words.
Yeah, and that is where I can definitely agree with, especially a Christian of your kind, which is to say someone who will say that and recognize that. Because some people place a lot of stock, particularly Catholics, they place a lot of stock in church tradition and the traditions that developed after Nicaea. And I look at that with a similar kind of man-made skepticism. And I think to myself, like it also gives me license to, when I look at the New Testament and I think, some scholars think that Paul maybe didn't write that letter and that's a big problem. But for someone like me, it's like, who cares? If I decide that Paul didn't write 1 Timothy, then I'll just look at the rest of it and I'll try to work out what came between the lines. A good friend of mine said to me once, when there's all this discussion about whether we have the real words of Jesus and whether the Gospels are accurate and whether it's all apocryphal stories, he said that because these were written from early church traditions, Jesus was a real man who was doing real things. We can still know a lot about the character of Jesus. He said, imagine if, for example, have you heard of the Churchillian drift? where like quotes get attributed to Churchill, even though he never said them. Same thing happens with C.S. Lewis.
Yeah.
And he said, imagine if the only information you had historically about Churchill was a book of apocryphal quotes that he never actually said, but that people believed he said. You'd still get a pretty good picture of the kind of person Winston Churchill was.
That's worst case scenario. You still get a pretty good...
You're still getting an image. And so I'm really interested in the scholarly stuff and like, well, did Jesus really say that? Was this an interpolation? Blah, blah, blah. Is this a translation thing? But the thing that's most fascinating to me below all of that is like, who was this guy and what was he doing to cause all of this? Even if it's a bunch of confusion and confused timelines, and even if some stories got in there that shouldn't have got in there, the fact that this scramble to write all of this down and turn it into
even with the drift,
exactly, it's still
I think
extremely interesting.
If we could time travel, you would be one of the rough gang. So would I. I don't think you'd be. I mean, even though you kind of like the headlines have used like, professor sort of Oxford. Well, are you a professor?
I'm not a professor, no.
You're very clever. Do you know what I mean? That could potentially like put you into the Pharisee type thing. Right. But you are the opposite. You are what you would have been running wild with Jesus, I think.
Yeah. I like that.
And also I sort of always got the feel with Jesus. He loved the challenge. He loved the riposte. He loved the mental, verbal, like theological challenges.
There's a lot of jousting, a lot
of jousting and brilliant sort of responses that have never been better. You know, whether it's in like, should we pay our taxes to Caesar or not? The Pharisees are trying to trip him up. And sort of that response of just like, well, whose head is on the coin? Pay to him and pay to God what is God. It's sort of brilliant.
Yeah, there's a brilliant.
And I would think that I see a beautiful alignment actually. I think if we would go back in time travel, you'd be running wild with him.
Well, if the science ever gets there and we manage to go back in time, when people say, where would you go?
Where would you go? Come on, what would you do?
Of course you'd go to meet Jesus.
I love it. What point? Where would you go? Would you go after the resurrection or would you want to be there at the beginning? What about in the 17 years?
That's interesting. I think that the moment that you'd want to witness, if you could only have 5 minutes, would be the moment of the crucifixion. And the reason is that you would see that this was a man, the crucifixion happened, you would see whether the curtain tore, whether the sky opened, all of that kind of stuff. And it would give you all of that. I mean,
But they keep finding evidence for like the, I think in the sort of, the star stuff and they said there was
like the solar eclipse.
The solar eclipse. I've actually done it. It's the exact kind of like
That's really interesting.
It's really interesting. And also that moment is kind of also to see the first ever Roman Christian. Well,
yes. Yeah.
The centurion
truly
son of God.
Yeah.
This man is the son of God.
But then part of
that's interesting. You go to that moment. That's kind of cool.
But part of me would say, although, you want to see the resurrection, you want to see part of me wants to say I would just like to meet him walking along during his ministry and just say, listen, man, I've got 5 minutes.
Yes.
Who are you? Like,
are you the real deal?
Are you Messiah? Are you God? Are you claiming to be God? Like, that's what I'd want to do. I'd want to ask that question. And I mean, where would you go in Jesus' life?
So
5 minutes.
So it's so interesting, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. I think, so, I mean, if you think of the biblical, so there are a lot of people that did get that chance and did it come exactly for that purpose. Say, I mean, one bit you might not have noticed that I really like is John the Baptist's relationship with Jesus. We kind of touched on it, but there's a really nice moment where if you think if anyone in the Jesus orbit is going to believe in him, it's John the Baptist. Known him from birth, kicking inside my mother's stomach whenever Jesus walked in the room. Like, I know this guy is a real deal. I'm baptizing the River Jordan saying there was one is coming after me is like, I know. And yet when he was in Herod's prison and he gets a chance to get a message to his disciples, the one thing he says is go back to Yeshua and just ask him, you really are who you say you are.
Is it you?
And I love that because like, if even John the Baptist had doubts, because of he's like being tortured and in a brutal prison and like we're human, then I can have doubts. And it's like, he's been a real hero of mine, actually, John the Baptist.
Me too. I think he's my favorite person.
Well, it's interesting you say that.
So interesting.
I'd be interested in what I like about him. is that everyone always, Jesus says there's no one being greater.
Yes.
He is the number one in the prophets,
That's
number
right.
one. And I always think, like, we think to be number one in life, you've got to be like a leader. You got to be like, I would think Moses or one of these people, like on top of the mountain, the big beard, the loud voice, the authority. It's how we're brought up to think these are our people in our lives who are the leaders.
Mm-hmm.
And yet it was the rough one who lived off the land
Camel
and was
skin.
wild and just loved this Yeshua character.
Yeah.
And
This is the
he said,
greatest
no one
man ever
better.
born of a
Why
woman.
do you like
I think he's fascinating because he seems to be this sort of precursor to Jesus in a weird way. He's the introduction to Jesus. There's a bit of mystery as to who he was and why he was baptizing and why he found his way into the wilderness and what it means to preach a baptism for the repentance of sins and why Jesus would need to undergo that. All of these questions are so interesting. There are also communities of people who particularly revere John the Baptist. There's a group called the Mandaeans who are like this Gnostic sect who think that John the Baptist is the most important prophet. Now, they see Jesus as a false prophet, actually. There's this whole historical like fascination with John the Baptist because he's, and it's also the insistence early on that he is not the Messiah. You do it
he
in
keeps
the book
saying,
as well.
I'm not the guy.
Which implies to me that at the time, there were lots of people who thought he was the Messiah. And
because that's what happens. People want to think somebody's great and then the power goes to your head.
And when Herod Antipas first hears about Jesus, he goes, this guy is John the Baptist reborn in the Gospels. And so what was John the Baptist doing if when he hears this Jesus guy, it reminds him of John? So it seems like John the Baptist had this incredible ministry and he must have been doing all kinds of interesting things and there were all kinds of people who thought he was the Messiah. And so, and we only get clues to that in the Gospels. And so I'd be fascinated. Do you know what? Maybe I'd go to the baptism. So I'd love to meet John the Baptist.
With the sky open.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool to see too,
Because if you see that, then you know. Because you can't fake that, So in a way, that's as convincing as the resurrection. Because if you're there and you literally see this guy up in the voice of God going, this is my son.
And the dove, you kind of get a proof of the Trinity.
Well, it's like...
You get to meet John and you get to see Jesus. It's all there. I think
you know what?
that
They
might
all
be the
saw
moment.
all these things. And yet still the next day,
yeah.
they would go, well,
not so sure.
The clouds could have... And was it thunder that sounded? And that dove, there had been a few doves around that day.
Never enough. What I do know, though, is that I speak to a lot of interesting people. I speak to some scientists. If I ever meet one who tells me that they're onto something with time travel, I'll know who to call to go back and meet John the Baptist.
I love it.
Bear Grylls, thank you for your time.
Well, you know what? You're such a great guy. And really, I really mean it. You're doing such a beautiful job. Keep seeking like all of us. And we're told when we seek, we find.
We'll see how it goes. Thanks again.
You're a great man.
Awesome. If you enjoyed that conversation, you might like my previous episode with James McGrath on John the Baptist. You can watch it by clicking the link that's on your screen. To support my work and get early, ad-free access to episodes, subscribe to my Substack at alexoconnor.com. Thanks for watching.
It's a nice episode, bro. But I'm not even sure. Is it picking my microphone or is it picking... Yep, it's picking my microphone. That's okay. That is good. Yup. Checked exceptions are exceptions that are checked by the compiler at compile time. Exceptions will not compile without handling them, either using track as well as throw statement. Checked exceptions will not compile without handling. Without try catch or throw statement. Yup. Oh yeah, the mock interview. I still need to do that. I'll do the exception handling things first. Like I'll just click through these.
Congratulations on what is exception handling? The important applications, right? When should we use finally in real applications?
I think I'll also finish
Finally block. So that is
collections
also an
today. How
example.
much time
Okay.
has it been?
Yes, so let's answer this question.
It's been only 49 minutes. Yeah, I'll also do connections today.
Can we have multiple catch? What is catch all block? Is it a good practice
I
in
can
real
just
applications?
take them by myself. Oh, that is just amazing to see. I've done exception handling for today. This mock interview question and answer, I need to do that. Before that though, we'll update this. Yeah. 70% he said like I could go for any interview, but nah, I need to do like all these. So collections for basics and advanced, I'll do both today. I think I have like all the like functions for array list and all those already like written already. I think like it would be that important to like go through all this much. I would be able to finish collections pretty fast, and I've already made like a collections table, like a chart of like all the collection classes and all the interfaces for collection as well. There's a table collections, list queue sets, then there's maps, sorted maps, tree maps. Yeah, I think I mean most of it would have already been done. We need to first go through this interview thing. The interview questions. Abstract class and exception handling. I can go through both right now.
All right, now it's the time for more. How can an interface inherit methods from another interface? Think for a second.
Inherit methods from another interface. It's implement the another interface.
You are right. Here is an interface, right? And this is inherited in
Extend
another
them.
interface back like this. But don't think that the answer is implement. The answer is extend. Yes.
Yeah, implements is for class. Yeah, my bad, my bad. Keep forgetting that like implements is for class, external is for interface. Let's stay remembering that, bro. Isn't what I mean? Implements is for interfaces, bro.
Interface to interface inheritance is done by extends only. So interface to class
Okay, interface to interface is done by extends, but interface to class is done by implements. Okay, I knew implements and interfaces. Well, because of the I is common in them, but like interface to interface is done by extends.
done by implement. All right, but interface to interface is not implement because this interface is not implementing the methods of above interface. It's just extending. Okay, and the same answer is written here also. How can you provide default behavior for methods in the interface?
But default behavior for methods in an interface. Yeah, you can just have like default fucking what is that called? What default variables? You could have default methods in it, right? Yeah. Void start and then a default void stop.
Think for a second, and here is the code, and you can see here we use the default keyword and create the default method to provide the default implementation of the method inside the interface. All right, now when you will implement the interface of a vehicle interface in some class, then for the abstract method you will provide the implementation, but for the default method there is no need. You can, when create the object in some class, you can directly use the default method by the object, so implementation is not necessary. Okay, so that is the answer, and the same thing is written here. What is the impact of adding a new method to an existing interface? Think for a second, and the answer is here. All existing classes that implement the interface will break, okay, unless you have to provide an implementation for the new method, obviously, so the crash will happen. So to avoid this, you have to provide the implementation. Can you use the final keyword with an abstract? Here, all existing classes that implement the interface will break, okay, unless you have to provide an implementation for the new method, obviously, so the crash will happen. So to avoid this, you have to provide the implementation. Can you use the final keyword with an abstract class? Why or why not? Pause and think. So here it's the answer, and you can see it's no. Because the reason is abstract class are used for what? Used as the superclass, okay? But the final keyword prevents a class from being the superclass. So therefore the two concepts are contradictory, okay? So it cannot happen. The compiler will show you the error. And the same thing is written here. What is a no argument constructor? So sometimes we know the answer, but not the right and exact word name for it. So here's the constructor code. You can see we have the constructor here, and this is the no argument constructor. Why? Because it does not. Okay. Can you store different data types in a single array?
In a single array? I don't think you can.
How? The answer is yes and no, both. So here is the code.
Yeah, you would need to like have them all as a oh. Okay, yeah, as an object. Okay.
See, in normal arrays, the data type is either a string or integer. Only one type. Okay, only one type is allowed. So that is the normal case. But
yeah, you could like, create like a wrapper class. Like this is like a wrapper object class. And like each of the objects.
Here you can see the array of these objects. Okay, we are creating the array of the objects, and then we are storing the string, the integer, double, any type here. So it is possible via the array of objects, but not with the normal arrays like the array of strings or integer or something. Okay, so the same thing and same answer is written here also.
Yup.
So on completing the last chapter, now we will start covering the questions on exception handling. Great, now it's the time for mock interview on exception handling topic. Here are some indirect, short and scenario based questions. So let's start with the first question. What happens if a written statement is used inside a try block of a try catch finally? Pause and think. So here is the code, and you can see that try.
What happens if a written statement is used inside try block of a try catch family? I mean, yeah, it just like stops even if there is like an error. It just like returns the particular thing, and like it just stops.
And catch, and then here we have the written here inside the try.
Yeah. In try block just ends, and then Oh wait, I guess after try it first goes to finally, then comes back to finish the return.
So what will happen here from here when the statement will reach here, the program execution will reach here. Before returning, the finally will execute. Okay, it will definitely execute, and then only the return statement will be
Okay, so return is only executed after the finally. Okay.
executed, this return one. All right. So the same thing, same answer will be written here. Basically, finally will definitely execute. What happens if an exception is thrown in the finally block? Let me show you. See, we have the try block and we are forcefully throwing one exception, which will go to the catch block. And in that catch block also, we are forcefully throwing one exception by using throw keyword, and it will go to finally block. So finally block also some error may occur. Means this is I'm using forcefully, but in your code also there is a possibility. Okay, you have long functions there. Now what will happen if there is an exception inside the finally block? Then this exception will override all the above catch and throw try exception. It will suppress the previous exceptions. Okay, so here in the output also you can see exception in finally block only has been executed. This exception not means they are lost. So that is the answer, and the same thing is written here. Can you explain how custom exceptions are created and used in Java? So in very short, I will explain. Here is the simple code, and the answer is custom exceptions are user-defined exception first. That is first thing. Okay, you will create those custom exceptions, and then for that, either you will use this exception class, and the answer is here. Custom exceptions are user-defined exceptions that can be created by extending the exception class for checked exception or the runtime exception. So like Java provides you input-output exception, inner exception, or null pointer exception, you can also create your own exceptions by extending the exception class. That is the answer.
I might need to write this down. Public custom check exception string message. But how do you right? Like, how do you enter the logic to know when this exception is being met? Exception is being met. Custom. Oh. I need to find another podcast. I think I could. Yeah, I found this already.
It's fascinating. I mean, I'm paying attention as the words are coming out of your mouth to how they are just sort of emerging,
blah,
right?
boo, boo.
And it's weird to think that, like, in a way, as far as my experience is concerned,
Oh wait, I got a funny ass clip. I might want to watch this. Wait a minute. This. I can watch this now. ठीक है, ठीक है. Wait, my microphone was on during all that. Fuck. It's so fucking funny ass clip, bro. I need to do this custom exceptions bullshit, bro. I think after this I'll end for sure, nigga. Yo, what? Yo. Check custom exceptions, bro. I fucking hate custom exceptions, bro. Like, who invented this shit, bro? My god, bro. I need to put something in the background, bro. I cannot just sit and fucking write this shit, bro. We'll be watching that, but not right now.
concerned, it's fascinating. I mean, I'm paying attention as the words are coming out of your mouth to how they are just sort of emerging,
blah, blah,
right?
boo, boo.
And it's weird to think that, like, in a way, as far as my experience is concerned, everything that I know of you and am hearing of you and am experiencing of you is just appearing in my brain.
Yeah.
There's just this. I open my eyes and there's just this image, and I open my ears and there are just these words. And there's a sense in which when I'm speaking right now, I'm not calculating every word that's coming out of my mouth. I'm not, thinking about every sentence. These words, where the hell are they coming from? They are just going. I didn't know I was about to say the word going. It just came out, right? And
you have no idea how you said it. And when you fail to say it, if you forget it for a moment and you struggle to find a word, or you say the wrong word, that too is mysterious. Your success is mysterious, and your failure is mysterious.
But it makes it so fascinating to think that my own words coming out of my mouth seem no more connected to this thing I'm calling me than the words that are coming out of your mouth, right? And I don't know if that's what people are talking about when they describe the so-called ego death, or the one with everything type attitude that people have with spiritual experiences, if it's got something to do with this sense of realizing that, in other words, I've always pictured it as when someone says, there's no difference between me and everyone else in the world. I've always imagined the kind of experience they're having as something like them implanting themselves in everybody else and taking the self and sort of extending it to be the world, whereas maybe it sort of goes in the other direction.
Yeah, it does. I mean, so have you ever taken psychedelics of
I have,
kind?
yeah.
What have you taken, and what was that like?
2CB, mushrooms, LSD once, and never enough to have some crazy experiences, but nothing to the extent of ego death.
Right.
As in, I've never had an experience where I've come out thinking, oh, that's what it means that's what the death of the ego is. I've come out thinking, that's what this means. I can understand why people talk in this way or that way, and just perhaps the most transformative experiences of my entire life. But I've never experienced an ego death.
Right. Yeah. So the way I would add the psychedelic experience to this map is that, and the reason why it can be incredibly useful but also misleading, is that with psychedelics, I mean, the one thing that's very important about them is that in all but the rarest cases, they're guaranteed to do something, right?
Oh, yeah.
If you take the requisite dose, you're going to have a change in your experience. So it's not going to be no one comes away from 300 micrograms of LSD saying, well, nothing happened, right? I mean, there are actually some people who, for whatever reason, are just neurologically impervious to certain psychedelics. But in the general case, you're just not going to be bored. You're not, I mean, it could be terrifying, but something's going to happen, and it's going to happen right on schedule, right? And you can't say the same thing about meditation or yoga or fasting or any other discipline that someone's going to engage so as to perturb their consciousness. And that's why psychedelics have been so useful for people as a gateway to meditation or the contemplative life in some way, because it's the thing that proved to them that it was possible to have a very different experience of the world, assuming they had a positive experience on psychedelics. What's misleading about it is it gives you the sense that spiritual expansion and progress is a matter of changing the contents of consciousness. It's a matter of having more mind and more esoteric states of mind, and to see brighter colors and to see different things with your eyes closed, right? Like now my eyes are closed, I don't see much of anything, but on mushrooms, wow, it was like an Aztec empire, and it was just I felt like I was could psychically travel to different places, and it's like that must be where spiritual progress lies. What's misleading about that is that we know that any experience you have, any qualitative change in the contents of consciousness is by definition temporary, right? I mean, first you don't have it, and then you have it, and then you don't have it, right? Because that's the nature of any experience. It's like, drinking a cup of tea or a cup of coffee or whatever. It doesn't matter how big the cup is. Eventually you drink it, and then you no longer have that tea or coffee. So sort of impermanence rules, right? And so you can't, so a transitory spiritual experience can't be the real bedrock that is the basis of, the deepest possible well-being, if such a thing is discoverable. The other thing is it's misleading with respect to the sense that it gives you a sense that freedom, real psychological freedom and transformation is elsewhere, right? There's ordinary consciousness where you feel like the sort of conventional sense of self in a physical world that's not self, and you're disposed to do things like check your email, or how you can drive a car, you're not stoned, and yet there's all kinds of things denied you in this sense. There's all kinds of things you can't notice.
Mm-hmm.
And then you drop acid or you take MDMA or whatever it is, and you have this sea change in the contents of consciousness, and all of that seems, assuming you're having good changes and not, you're not pitched into psychosis, which is also available. It seems like that progress is just is a matter of getting better, more expansive, more love-drenched, more, insightful, more meaning-drenched thoughts and emotions and intuitions. What meditation does is show you, and again, meditation can mean many things, but is what I mean by meditation and what people should mean by meditation. It unhooks you. It's essentially orthogonal to that whole regime of changes changes in the contents of consciousness, and it allows you to recognize something about consciousness itself that is present, whatever the contents. Right? I mean, it could be the full explosiveness of changes of the peak of a psychedelic trip, or it could just be the most boring, ordinary mind that just it's just you looking at a cup on a table and nothing else, right? There are things you can notice about consciousness that cause the sense of self, the sense of subject-object separation, to drop out, right? And so you can be so ordinary, just staring at a cup consciousness can be free of self, and extraordinary, there's just an ocean of color and energy and bliss, can be free of self. And that freedom, in some sense, equalizes those two states, right? It's not to say that there's not, that oceans of color and bliss have a lot going for them. I mean, it's fun, but it's great when they appear and it's fine when they disappear, right? Then nothing really is lost if you can find this thing that is what I would call non-duality. It's also, it could be called selflessness. It could be called emptiness. I mean, there are various framings in Buddhism and elsewhere, but it's different than the expectation you just described.
By extending the exception class. How do you handle multiple exceptions in a single catch block? You can handle multiple kind of exceptions, like this is one, and then pipe symbol by using this, okay, and a proper user-friendly error message, and the same thing is exception or stopping the application. We are performing some logic. We are executing some method one properly. So basically, we are not doing exception recommended because we are intentionally expecting the error, which is again a bad thing for a good architecture application. Okay, so the same thing is written here also.
Okay, next is collections. Collections is quite a big of a section. Wow. Multi-threading is pretty small comparatively. Wow. I want to do multi-threading one of these days. Before that, I need to be finishing collections, and after that, just generics, exceptions, and all that. It's like lesser that's left. I want to finish collections today, though. Let's see.
Of getting more mind, right? Like if suddenly you're expanded beyond yourself into the rest of the stuff that until a moment ago seemed like it was not self, right? So now it's not just me in this skin suit. I'm over there. I was looking through your eyes too, and I'm out there with the people and the animals who are not me. But now all of a sudden, it's just one big mind. I would imagine there's actually experiences that can seem that way.
Yeah, I have this written already, the whole thing. Collection of elements.
Whether they're veridical or not is certainly debatable, but I think you can have that sense that you of unity with a larger totality, but that's not the crucial insight that is selflessness by in the meditative space. It's a much more ordinary and simple recognition that if you pay close enough attention, like just in hearing any sound, like you hear, the sound of traffic or whatever it is, if you the default mode is to feel like you're the one hearing. There's a hearer, and then there's a thing heard, and there's just this subject object kind of divide that's getting bridged with this operation of hearing. But real concentration, or better yet, a real analysis of this sense of being a subject in the first place, can suddenly collapse that
Size
to
and cannot resize
what
the
is clearly
same
a more
fucking thing, bro. Are these guys retarded? Like, why the fuck is these, like, there's two different for these, bro? These are just like fucking. They should also like mention what is it a part of if it's not a part of Java collection framework, bro. Like, these are like such bad notes, man. I'm actually like kind of bummed that I got this course. Not a part of Java collection framework. Yeah, I mean, everything else that is here is like something that I don't really need to write out. I mean, it doesn't have like good images for like doubly linked and linkless and shit. I could have used those. I have them, but singly linkless are just not present in Java. Wowzers. Hmm. Okay, so like linked lists in Java are like all like doubly linked lists. Okay. I guess I'll make a point for linked list or not. I don't really need to, but I mean, I generally just don't really need to write it down here, but
Basic condition of just hearing, like it's just this pure perception of hearing prior to the concept of self and thing heard. And there's freedom in that. I mean, there really is as you begin to rest in that more and more and recognize its implications psychologically, it does become the antidote to all kinds of ordinary psychological suffering that all kinds of knots in yourself that you otherwise are trying to figure out how to untie. You're thinking, well, why do I feel this way? How can I feel better? How can I be happier? Why am I so, disappointed and regretful and anxious, etc.? The more you can fall back into this recognition that there's no center to this experience, it suddenly gives you a direct experience of equanimity in the midst of other, even classically unpleasant experiences, right? So you can be feeling significant physical pain, or you can be feeling nausea, or you can feel something that is. I'm not saying there's no reason to act on bad perceptions. I mean, you might have to go to the hospital, but the question is, how unhappy do you have to be at every step along the way as you're riding to the hospital, or dealing with the uncertainty of what the diagnosis is, or whatever. Like there's this adventure that happens at the level of concepts and at the level of changes, which you can keep punctuating with a recognition of selflessness, and each recognition does actually reset you to a place of real tranquility in the midst of it. And it's a tranquility that is not dependent on any changes. It's not dependent on the next good thing happening. It's not dependent on the bad thing that's present going away. It really does in a very paradoxical way tend to equalize experience. And how this, I mean, I don't want to bring us back to the moral landscape, but it is somewhat, confusing how this might relate to everything I've said about the moral landscape, because everything I say about the moral landscape suggests that there really are stark differences between experiences. It really matters that your hand not be on a hot stove. There may be more to the story given the requisite ways of being in touch with what it is like to just be, in each moment, rather than become in the next moment through thought and concepts.
So there's no you, there's just the sounds, the sights, the thoughts that emerge. I guess
there's just experience, right? So the conventional sense is you're having an experience, right? There's you, the subject, the ego, the self. And it's important to specify what that is for most people, because I'm not saying that people are illusions. I'm not saying that you don't have a body. I'm saying, but people don't feel identical to their bodies. They feel like they're subjects that have bodies. I mean, they feel like passengers in their bodies for the most part. You feel like you're in a relationship to your body. When your body malfunctions, when you have a pain that you don't want, or you have some symptom of something that some possible disease that worries you, you're a prisoner of the body, but you're an inner subject. You're a kind of homunculus with respect to your presumed sense of what you are, from the first person side. Now we know that makes no sense neurologically, right? I mean, you're either the whole body, or your whole central nervous system, if you want to demarcate it in some way, or you're just the part of your central nervous system that is conscious, right? Wherever consciousness stops in the body, well, then that's the boundary of what you are. But most people feel like they're a subject, very likely in their head, that is, in some sense, unchanging, right? Like it's not that you notice changes, but you're noticing those changes from the point of view of being this subject that's not reducible to those changes, right? Like you feel like I was tired a moment ago, but now I'm not tired. But then you notice the change, there's the fatigue, and now that fatigue is gone, but the subject seems somehow untouched by those changes. But the subject does seem, therefore, not identical to experience, right? Like you're having the experience. You're enduring the experience. You're riding around in the middle of the experience. And that's the false point of view that's undercut through meditation.
But of course, when a thought arises in your head, that thought's not arising in my head, right? There's this first person center of consciousness to which that thought is happening. That's you and not me. If the self is an illusion, if the self doesn't exist, if there is no center there, then what is the thing that a thought like that can happen to, that makes it such that you can have the thought, but I can't have your thought?
Yeah, well, so that's why I said that people aren't illusions in the same way. I mean, I guess there's some perspective by which you could say that people are illusions, but not for these purposes. It's not mysterious, from my point of view, it's not mysterious that I'm thinking my thoughts and not thinking your thoughts, right? Because my thoughts, the only place for my thoughts to appear is where they are appearing in this system, this organism that is me, and you've got your own organism over there, which is you, and you. So the fact that you have your memories and I have my memories is no more mysterious than saying, I just wrote something on my palm and it's on my palm and not on your palm, right? It's like this is just a physically instantiated thing about this system that is. It's like the pain in my knee is felt in my knee because it's a pain, and there's only one knee in the universe that feels that is giving rise to this particular pain.
Yeah.
And there's only one brain in the universe that is susceptible to those inputs. And so it is with my memories, and so it is with anything else that I might think. But the I part of it, the sense that it's me and mine from the point of view of a subject, that's when it becomes impersonal. That's when it becomes, because consciousness really is just the fact that anything is appearing at all. So in some sense, consciousness for me is the same as for you, whatever you're conscious of, because consciousness is just the condition in which there is a qualitative character to anything. Right. So I just view I view consciousness ultimately as deeply impersonal and in some sense transcendent. I mean, it's transcendent of the feeling of being a locus of consciousness in the head, right? You can get rid of that feeling. You can inspect that feeling such that it disappears. And what you have is a totality of appearances that includes all of your experience. It's not like your experience suddenly changes radically, but there's no center to it. You're not on the edge of it. You're not separate from it. There's just it, right? And that there's a freedom in that because you're no longer, I mean, the sense of self is a kind of contraction. It's a perpetual mode of reacting to experience. So it is born of this perpetual, I like this, I don't like that, I like this, I don't like that, more, less, and you're constantly gripping the deliverances of your five senses and your mind, right? You're feeling, you're cognitively, you're trying to figure things out. You feel doubt. Doubt is a kind of emotion, right? And and I would argue it's a negatively valenced one. Uncertainty is like that, and you're constantly working in every channel in which you're available, and all of it implies a center, and that's the feeling of being a subject. When you look for that center and fail to find it, all of your capacities are still available to you. You can still hear and smell and think, but it's not. It's like the difference between having an open hand versus having a clenched fist. I mean, you can sort of clench your fist enough. If this is the only way you've ever had a hand, well, you might even think there's something in the middle of it, right? You might think there's a structure here, but it's an implied structure. Like if you just open your hand, you realize there was nothing in there, however it felt, and nothing else need change. It's just that there's a source of confusion and discomfort that is no longer there, and then it remains to be seen just how good it is for alleviating other psychological problems or sources of suffering, or what is it good for is an open question as you live your life with this capacity. But not having the capacity and then being in doubt about it is just a blocker for exploring it, right? You just then can't, it's like being in doubt as to whether or not, it's possible to, whatever it is, get in shape, because like the gym hasn't been invented, no one's ever figured out that just arbitrarily lifting heavy objects will change your body, and the first time someone does it and describes it, it seems totally pointless. I mean, you mean to say that with all the things you could be doing in life, you're just going over there and picking up heavy objects and putting them down and to the point of discomfort, and sometimes getting injured, and you're saying this is actually good, and if you couldn't see the changes in people's bodies, if you couldn't put a photo of Arnold Schwarzenegger on the wall of the gym to show that something radically different is possible, well, then everyone would be we'd be 200 years into this project and still be talking about our doubts about whether or not there's a there, right? And it's just a inconvenient fact that certain changes are not visually easy to see, and that's just a problem.
Well, I think I'm no longer a meditation skeptic, at least to the degree that I think I'll be giving it a proper go. I mean, when I say I've never meditated, I'll have closed my eyes and thought, as you've put it before, where people have encouraged me to meditate and I've sort of gone along with it. But I think a conversation like this is something like the equivalent of putting that picture on the wall of the gym, where you begin to sort of paint a picture of what things can look like to a brain that reflects on these things deeply.
Well, I'll add one more piece to you, for you, which is it's kind of a logical handhold that I think it should work. It's even if you were in doubt about, so the claim I'm making is that the feeling of self is vulnerable to inspection, right? If you look closely enough at it, you'll see that consciousness is a prior fact about you that doesn't actually conform to this feeling of I or me, right? Or subjectivity. And there's one way you can see that logically, which is if feeling like I or me feels like something, that itself must be an appearance in consciousness. I mean, that there's something you're noticing about your experience that feels that way, right? And there's in the same way that you're noticing my voice as an object, it's just an appearance. The fact that you're outside my voice, being able to notice it, proves that you're not reducible to it, right? And so it is with sensations in your body. Like the pain in your knee is not you because you're over here noticing it down there, right? If this feeling of self feels like anything, if there's any signature energetically, if it's on your face or in your chest or somewhere where you might intuit it, there's this prior condition of just the light by which it's being seen. So what's that feel like, right? And so that's anyway, that's just a concept, but that's a pointer into why it would make sense that this would be available.
If you enjoyed that clip, then you will love the full episode with Sam Harris, which you can watch by clicking right here. Or just stay here staring at my face. Go on, click it. Don't make it weird.
You gotta help Alex figure out his moral position through a series of questions to figure out if he's a piece of shit.
I think I'm the most empathetic out of the four.
There's no way.
Out of the four of us, I'm the most empathetic.
It's not even like...
This guy's a fucking crazy person.
He's the most sensitive.
I have a switch.
For people he's never met before.
I have a switch.
Yeah, but like if they're
I love
that's
everybody.
not real. That's not real empathy.
No, I
We've
love
never
everybody.
met before.
I love
That's
everybody.
performative.
You start
That's so
good.
easy.
You start
That's
good,
so
and then
easy.
you got to fuck it up.
You're
Everybody
like
starts bad for you, and
what
then
do
they
call
have
it?
to
You're
like.
a Hare Krishna. That's the you know what I mean? Like
I don't know
you're
what that
trying
is.
too hard.
I don't know
The people
You're
playing the
basically Hindu.
bongos.
You're saying you're Hindu.
No, Hare Krishnas are not Hindu.
What are they?
Fucking frauds.
They worship Krishna.
Yeah, frauds, dude. I tried reading one of the leader's books, and this is why I immediately tapped out. The guy interviewing him goes, "You preach not having like leading a materialistic life, but you will accept like gold gifts from people and whatever." And the guy goes, "Well, if you're giving me the gift, it's like giving it to God." And I was like, "All right, fuck this guy, dude. Fuck this guy all the way."
I like him now. That's why I'm into it.
It's a mean thing not to accept the gift. They went
But why
out
do
their
you
way
think you
to.
have the most empathy?
I just hear the way you guys talk sometimes, and you guys are.
What are you performing for?
That's not real.
No, I'm really not.
You're empathetic for people you don't know.
I honestly feel that way.
You think that we
honestly
lack
feel-
empathy?
think collections is done, right? Like this, I did collections, did arrays, linked list. I need to do hash map and hash set. What is a tree set? Is a collection that stores unique elements in an odd sorted order. Sorted set, okay. I think I'll just like write this last bit. I know hash. Okay, hash set, tree set, and hash map, hash table. These four. What the fuck? Daniel Naroditsky died? How did he die, bro? What the fuck happened to Daniel Naroditsky, bro? Fuck.
Hi, folks. I didn't want to make a video about this for a little while. And just like the last video on the subject, nothing in this video is monetized. It's just me trying to send a message to all of you on the biggest platform, the biggest microphone that I have. It's currently 9 in the morning where I am. And soon I will be flying to the funeral of a friend, of a pillar of the chess community, of a brilliant man, Daniel Naroditsky. It still doesn't feel real. It's like a bad dream that you just want to wake up from. And I wanted to wait a little while, maybe talk to the family, see what was the best way to unite the chess community moving forward, not just in an attempt to honor Danya, but frankly, in an attempt to bring him and his family any sort of justice for what Danya went through for the past year and a half. And of course, I am talking about rampant attacks, effectively, accusations of foul play in chess from a former world champion in Vladimir Kramnik, who we're going to talk about all that. I thought there would be a time and a place. It's very difficult to separate the horrible news of Danya's passing with the treatment he received from the former world champion, an idol of his. There's a photo on the internet of Danya as a child standing next to Kramnik. And for me, it was a conversation that can happen after a grieving period. But after what I saw this morning, I woke up and I am sick to my stomach. And I want to record this before I go to the airport because This has to stop. I don't know what to do. I will try to play some sort of role in it, a key role. But what I saw this morning is making me sick to my stomach, and I need to get it off my chest, okay? So, very quick context. For the better part of, let's say, 2 years, Vladimir Kramnik took it upon himself to become the person that is going to solve fair play, to say things about cheating in chess that nobody's willing to say because, as in his own words, censorship, chess.com censoring the content creators or the grandmasters or whatever it is. You know it. I mean, he's accused Hikaru Nakamura directly for 2 years at this point. And Hikaru has sort of gotten over it to the best of his ability. I woke up this morning to the following, okay? And I'm sorry, I'm rambling a little bit. Please bear with me. I woke up to this post. This is a post from Emil Sutovsky, the frequent person on this channel, CEO of FIDE. Amount of love given to Danya post-mortem is unprecedented. I can't recall anything of the kind, but here's the problem. Where are all of you when Danya was alive and unwell? I'm not talking about stepping in when he was accused, although it's a separate important matter. I know many people find it hard to express their opinion, as the problem is huge and striking a balance is impossible. One thing is clear, the way Kramnik approaches it simply can't be accepted, and his reaction on Danya's passing is appalling and outright shameful. FIDE is not a court of justice, but we will act within our jurisdiction. However, let's not oversimplify it. It is too simple to focus on Kramnik. Danya was clearly not at his best in recent months. He stopped appearing as a commentator for one reason or another. He was not his usual self. Now, all those who claim dear Danya was to their heart, how good a friend they were. Where have you been? What did you do? All those Kramnik attacks on Danya happened not this week or month. It was not a shocking accusation that killed Danya overnight. It kept haunting him for more than a year, even if there was not much more polemics of recent. So I ask you, alleged Danya's friends, what did you do to help him for half a year? Did many of you write to him and ask whether he is okay? Why he, arguably the best commentator online, disappeared from the screens? Did you text him to ask him why he stopped streaming? Then he talks about his own experiences with Danya. And then he said, he might be surprised to read about this or that person allegedly being his friend. Danya was kind to many, but he feels like most of the time he was lonely. Virtue signaling, like grabbing is the worst way to pay respect to Danya. I'm sorry, I am irate. I can't even fully read this tweet because while he wrote 2 sentences about Kramnik and whatever FIDE is gonna fucking do, because I don't think anything is gonna happen. I don't curse in my videos, but I can't even, look, we don't know. I was a friend of Daniel, and I don't know what happened, okay? I don't know what happened. He had so many people in his life talking with him. The close group he had in Charlotte, North Carolina, wrote a beautiful, beautiful post about him. I should pull it up. It's from Grant Oen. Please find it on Twitter. I spoke to so many people who have spoken to him just in the last week. This is such a heinous thing to say. He wrote 5 times as much, pointing the finger at the people who could have helped the man, try to talk him through it. Now, I'm just gonna keep showing you things here because I'm gonna lose my mind. I'm sorry. I really am. I'm not in good shape, and I don't want to keep this inside. I just don't. This is like a borderline therapy session for me. Sorry, I clicked on the wrong thing. We're gonna go back here for a second. Nemo wrote something a couple of days ago. She said, in watching the clip below of his last stream, hearing the pain in his voice, how deeply the baseless accusations affected him, it's time to stop worrying about the backlash. I'm calling on FIDE to remove Kramnik from the record books, revoke his title, disqualify his world championship. Chess is one of the most beloved games in the world and should be a place for kindness and inclusion. It should be unilaterally unacceptable to use a platform that chess has given you to bully, harass, and slander a colleague. What Kramnik has done to Navarra, Hikaru, Danya, and others cannot be tolerated. It is up to our community and the governing body to set an example. And they should, and there are more. Nihal Sarin, one of the very first people, and God bless his soul, the last person to have played Daniel Naroditsky in some chess, told the Indian Express that, the relentless baseless accusations, public interrogations he faced in recent months caused him immense pressure and pain. Nemo was co-signed by Hikaru. It says, "Thank you for making the statement so clearly." There is a video, there is a clip of Daniel just a few days before his passing, where he is obviously unwell while live streaming. If you haven't seen it, I mean, people have uploaded it. I can't even stomach watching stuff like that. But one of the things he says towards the end of of this stream is he literally says, "I can't end the stream after I start playing well. I can't play well off stream ever since the Kramnik stuff. People start accusing me." Those were literally some of the last sentences that he uttered after friends local in Charlotte came to get him at 2 a.m, seeing that he was struggling on a live stream. So I am sorry, but it is impossible to disconnect the two. You can sit there, the sun just went down, I'm sorry. You can sit there and you can say whatever you want, and, you know, wishing, you know, a lot of people are sending, you know, death threats and the usual internet behavior, and I do not condone that. You should not do that, but there needs to be a form of justice. Magnus Carlsen yesterday, while live streaming Title Tuesday, gave a statement, a very poignant statement, 6 minutes, where he said that he, if anything, he supported Danya in private, and he wishes maybe he did it publicly as well, although he can understand why, you know, he hopes people can understand why he would be, you know, obviously a bit careful given the entire, you know, Hans Niemann thing. And last but not least, I'm going to summarize all of this. You know, there was David Navarra. Before there was Danya, there was David Navarra, Czech Grandmaster, probably along with Danya, one of the most universally beloved people in the chess world. And he wrote a post about how being mentioned in a tweet of Kramnik from, as you can see, May 2024 is how long this has been going on, if not more, how this tweet over time made him have suicidal thoughts. And he wrote a letter to, you know, and he wasn't even, he was nowhere near as directly accused and belligerently accused as Daniel Naroditsky. Nothing has happened. Nothing has happened. So I'm making this video to give my summary of Kramnik, of Danya, of the current situation. I made a few videos about Vladimir Kramnik when it first all started. And I realized at a certain point, and it was about Hikaru, it was about the Hikaru streaks, how he can win a bunch of games in a row. And I realized at a certain point, it was hopeless because Kramnik was belligerent. Kramnik blocked everybody on social media that didn't agree with him. Kramnik only had his version of statistics. He played a match against Jose Martinez, and, you know, there was still a way to twist the whole thing into his narrative. And I made a decision. There is no point platforming him anymore. If you go to his posts, he has the same 50 Twitter accounts responding, the same 50 to 100 people. And I said, I will let him scream into his little void to little people who don't matter. Because as Magnus said in his statement, and as many people said, they think he's crazy. Like they don't support a lot of the stuff, even if there were the moments where he was correct, you know, because he wants to attack 10 people and maybe 1 or 2 will be guilty. And at a certain point, everybody stopped talking about it publicly because there was no point. I mean, he would just use whatever you said against him and try to add you to a defamation lawsuit that he claimed that he was working on. He would, like this, there is no winning. I mean, he is just a complete serial manipulator and abuser. Like whatever he strives for that he thinks is the reality, no matter what, you lose. If you say something, he immediately attacks you and says you're part of the mafia or whatever. If you don't say anything, it's because you're getting censored. So for a period of time, people privately, like you saw Magnus say, and Hikaru did it both private and public because he was also getting attacked. They talk privately and were like, listen, man, like it's nuts. He's never going to stop. How do you make the guy stop? Right? I mean, he has a social media. How do you make it stop? And maybe, I mean, it's not even clear if saying anything publicly would have changed anything, because Daniel performed at the World Blitz Championship at an elite level. Daniel went on a Russian podcast on Levitov, debated with Kramnik for an hour. It looked like everything had been put to rest, and Kramnik came back 3-4 times harder. Like, there was no winning. And there was no winning with this, like, dark spirit. There is nothing there. And for me to wake up this morning and to see this statement from Satovsky pointing the blame at the friends, the alleged friends, I don't know. I don't know if I've said anything coherent. I said at the beginning of the video, I wanted to wait. I wanted to speak to the family to see if there was a way to unite moving forward. I don't know how you can't revoke. I don't know. I'm at a loss. And what I woke up today to, with Kramnik already saying things like the chess mafia is dangerous, and it all feels so hopeless. Like for something to happen. Maybe the top 100 players in the world can sign a petition saying they're not going to play in any more events until something is done. What that something is, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what you do in chess. Do you suspend from events? There's all this, you can revoke the title, you can condemn, but what do you do? I don't have anything tangible. I have been sitting thinking about this for 48 hours, mixed with, is there something I could have done? I have never lost a friend. I went to the funeral of my grandfather, who was, 95. I don't know. I'm getting through this just like many of you, for whom Danya played some role in your life. Many people got into chess, and in their darkest times during the pandemic, or whenever, like studying for med school, or working your way up the ELO ladder, or connecting with friends and relatives over chess. Like, I can't believe this is real. And I can't believe that this is the immediate response from the only people maybe in the chess world who can do anything about it. So please, maybe we need a petition. I imagine I will be seeing some of the best players in the world, like Hikaru and Fabiano, maybe, I don't know, because I think he's in the US Championship, right? At his funeral. Please, we can't let this go in vain. And while I wanted to wait a little while before opening the Pandora's box of this conversation, the point is not to point blame and start this and that, but there needs to be justice. And I don't know how we're gonna get there with FIDE. Like, I just don't know. Those are my thoughts. I have to go to the airport. That's all I have for you today. I hope I've made myself clear. I'm rambling a bit, but I just can't believe I woke up to these posts. I can't believe it. I can't believe that it's already being twisted in such a way that
think is the next.
Any English opening can transpose to a queen's pawn game. Of course, if black doesn't play e5, if white plays d4. But the good thing about the King's Indian is you don't have to worry about any of that. You play the same setup, and, you know, later on, of course, there will be changes based on the setup that your opponent chooses. But unlike openings like the Queen's Gambit Declined or the Slav or, you know, some other stuff, you don't have to change your own move order based on whether your opponent plays c4 or d4 or one knight f3, which I know is very annoying to a lot of people. You just basically play the same moves against everything. And for lazy people like me, this is a godsend. Okay, so e4, we can play d6. Now, the sort of proper way for white to continue is to fianchetto the bishop and then to play knight ge2. This is called, at least in my sort of understanding, the Botvinnik setup. And if you're watching the speedrun, not for the first time, you've definitely seen me apply this setup with colors reversed against a lot of anti-Sicilians. And I'll kind of show you the connection. Okay, so here I... Just a second. And protect the bishop. This is unclear for me either. And they require a lot of patience. So let's start with rook a5. Just making sure that this pawn does not result as a moving target. Now, we're likely going to try to play mostly on the queen's side, but we also need to remember that, like, at some point we can completely crushing for white. The king time scramble phase, unfortunately, even at my level, especially in blitz. But a pretty instructive game nevertheless. It goes to show just how terrible the French is. Yeah, exactly. All right, guys, this is where we'll end. Hopefully you enjoyed the unexpected speedrun. We got 2 games in, but both of them were very rich, so a lot to look at also on your own. And yeah, just a final PSA, look at your own games. Just analyze your own blitz games if you want to improve. Don't just play 50 games and then pretend that, you know, blitz is not helpful. Like, actually look at your games with an engine, identify your mistakes, you know, understand why you made them, and try not to make them in the next game. And that's all it takes to improve. Thank you, folks. Glad you enjoyed it. I'm going to get going. I have the Chessbrah rating grind at 6, so I'm going to get some food and get some rest.
The standard analytics situation is fucked. Oh. I genuinely hate Hikaru, so I don't want to watch his video. Otherwise, I would watch his video and like did one more section. Hikaru.
You guys like the new setup? Not franchise. Are you the YouTube channel?
I've been reading all of your comments and concerns over the past few months, and I feel that I'm obligated to address the elephant in the room and clear everything up. No, I don't go to Cornell. Alright, so today we're going to be doing a sort of follow-up to my video on Hikaru. First of all, I wanted to thank you guys for all the support on the video. In just the first 2 days alone, we were able to hit over 100,000 views, and it's currently on pace for 1 million views as we speak, making it my fastest growing video on this channel. When I first decided to cover chess over a year ago, I didn't really know what to expect since my channel doesn't really have a background in chess. So seeing such a positive reception has been really nice to see, so genuinely, I appreciate the support. Now considering how big the video has gotten, you'd expect that there'd be some sort of response from our great friend Hikaru Nakamura.
Let's take a look at some random online comments that have either been made about me or chess in general.
Well, sadly, and maybe I just didn't look hard enough, but the only response I could find from Hikaru was one of his Discord mods calling me a clout chaser. I gotta say, it's honestly very unfortunate, because it would have been nice to see him address some of the stuff from my video. For someone who loves to watch other people's videos on his stream, I thought a video about him would make the perfect reaction material, but I guess not. So in the absence of a response from Hikaru, I'm just going to use random people from the comment section as a stand-in. I actually planned on discussing this topic in my original video before deciding to cut it, but about a year ago, Hikaru was under fire for taking a sponsorship with Stake. For those of you who don't know, Stake is an offshore online crypto casino that is currently facing 2 different class action lawsuits for illegally operating an online gambling casino in the United States without the proper licensing or registration. And here is Hikaru promoting Stake to his audience on the live streaming service.
I think I'm not going to be watching this video. I think I'll do multi-tradings next time. I've already done 2 sections for today. I mean, I've already done 2 of the sections for today, which is humanize thing. I did 1 for today and yesterday. Yes. Yup. That's about it. So I'll be ending my stream now.